The nurse scoffed when she saw the melted piece of metal dangling from the old man's neck. "Are those supposed to be dog tags?" she muttered under her breath, loud enough for the nearby patients to hear. Her laughter cut through the sterile air of the emergency ward like a blade, sharp, careless, and cold. He didn't flinch. The old man sat quietly in the triage chair, coat draped over his lap, boots caked in dried mud. His face was lined with age, but not just the kind that came from time. These were the deep, silent lines carved by deserts, by memories, by war. His hands rested on his knees, scarred, but still steady. People looked. No one spoke. His silence made them uncomfortable. He had walked in alone, just after the rain. Soaked, breath ragged. The nurse had told him he would have to wait, that there were real emergencies ahead of him. She didn't ask about the limp. She didn't notice the blistered skin beneath his collar, but she laughed at the tags. And then she touched them. They were scorched, fused to a burnt chain, and barely legible. The numbers had melted into each other. But one word remained. A location, etched into the back in worn, uneven strokes. 15 degrees 19 minutes north, 73 degrees 58 minutes east. She almost dismissed it again, until something in her gut told her to stop. She tapped the coordinates into her phone. The screen lit up, then went still. Her hands trembled. It was Goa. A military camp. 1971, India-Pakistan War. A site burned to the ground by enemy fire. 17 soldiers had been reported missing. Only one came back. The laughter vanished from her lips. She looked up at him. Again, really looked this time. The rain hadn't just soaked him. It had seeped into the cracks of who he was, dragging the desert back with it. The boots weren't muddy from the street. They were worn from years of sand, rock, and blood. His coat wasn't old. It was a combat field jacket. And those burns, they weren't new. They had been carried for over 50 years. Her voice failed her, so she printed his intake form, hands shaking. Name: Rizwan Altaf. Age: 73. Occupation: unknown. Emergency: burns reactivated by heat exposure and infection. Medical history: unlisted. Military record: classified. She brought him water. No words, just silence. And as the other staff came by one by one, word spread like a quiet tide. The intern who once complained about the broken vending machine now stood frozen, eyes wide. The resident doctor removed his gloves and walked over slowly. The security guard who usually scrolled through his phone stood straight, hand behind his back. No one laughed now. No one dared. It wasn't the tags. It was what they meant. What they survived. The scorched metal had once been pulled from the chest of a dying soldier in the middle of a firebombed tent. Rizwan had refused evacuation until all others were out. He dragged 6 men through flames. 2 didn't make it, for called him a ghost. 1 wrote his name into a wall, scorched like a prayer, before fading into silence. He never spoke of it again, until the rain forced him into that hospital. The same nurse, now quiet, her face pale, approached him with a blanket. "I'm sorry," she whispered, more to herself than to him. He gave her a slow nod. Nothing more. Because real strength doesn't demand attention. It waits. It watches. And when the world stumbles into its path, it does not shout. It reminds. Some scars don't scream. They whisper, and still silence entire rooms. A man doesn't need medals to prove he served. Sometimes, all it takes is silence and one melted tag. That night, a photo went viral. An old man, sitting upright in a hospital chair, with his burnt dog tags held out in the palm of his hand. Around him, nurses, doctors, and strangers stood in a circle, heads bowed, hands folded. There was no speech, just stillness. And in that stillness, respect was reborn. If this story moved you, tell us where you're watching from. Leave a comment for our silent heroes. And subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Stories that remind us that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it just waits to be seen.